There's a moment in every connection where everything silently changes. No arguments, no shouting, no dramatic goodbye. Just a shift, a realization. And when that moment comes, the Sigma male doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't try to fix what's already broken. He simply walks away. Not because he's weak, not because he stopped caring overnight, but because he finally sees something he can't unsee. Most people never notice when a Sigma male is reaching his limit, because on the outside, he stays calm. He smiles. He listens. He stays present. But inside, he's already detaching. And when she starts acting in certain ways that quietly destroy respect, trust, and peace, he doesn't fight for attention. He protects his silence. And once he chooses himself, there is no turning back. This is not a decision made in anger or impulsivity. It's a conclusion reached through careful observation, deep introspection, and a profound understanding of self-worth. The Sigma male operates on a different frequency than most. He doesn't react to emotions in the moment. He processes them internally, assesses their validity, and determines whether they align with his core values. When the misalignment becomes too great, when the cost of staying exceeds the benefit of the connection, he initiates his quiet exit. And unlike other personality types who might waver or second-guess themselves, once he's made this decision, it's final. The erosion of respect, the first crack in the foundation. The first thing that changes is subtle. She stops respecting his presence. Not openly, not in obvious ways, but in the small moments that most people overlook. She interrupts him when he speaks. She dismisses his thoughts. She stops valuing his time. She assumes he'll always be there, no matter how she behaves. And that's where the shift begins. Because the Sigma male doesn't demand respect. He observes it. He notices the tone in her voice, the way she responds, the way she stops appreciating the things he does without asking for praise. He doesn't react immediately. He doesn't confront her emotionally. He simply watches. And what she doesn't realize is that respect is everything to him. Not attention, not validation. Respect. Most men react when they feel disrespected. They argue. They try to prove their worth. They seek reassurance. But the Sigma male doesn't do that. Because he already knows his value. He doesn't need to convince anyone of what he brings. And the moment he feels that his presence is no longer appreciated, something inside him begins to shut down. He speaks less. He shares less. He becomes more reserved. Not to punish her, but to protect himself, because he understands something most people don't. You cannot force someone to value you. You cannot negotiate respect. It either exists or it doesn't. And when she notices his silence, she might think he's just distracted. She might think he'll return to how he was before. But she doesn't realize that every moment of disrespect creates emotional distance. Brick by brick, slowly, quietly, permanently. And by the time she realizes what's happening, he's already halfway gone. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Because the Sigma male never stays where he is tolerated. He stays where he is respected. And when that respect disappears, so does he. Respect for the Sigma male is not about ego or superiority. It's about basic human dignity and reciprocal consideration. It's about being seen as an equal partner whose thoughts, feelings, and contributions matter. When he shares something important and it's brushed aside, he registers it. When he makes time for her but his time is treated as disposable, he notices. When his opinions are dismissed or ridiculed, he files it away in his mental archive. These aren't isolated incidents to him. They're data points that form a pattern. And patterns reveal truth. What makes this particularly painful is that the Sigma male typically gives respect freely and generously. He listens deeply when others speak. He considers different perspectives. He honors commitments and values other people's time. When this courtesy isn't reciprocated, when his natural way of operating in relationships isn't matched, he experiences a fundamental disconnect. He doesn't become bitter or resentful. He simply recognizes that the relationship dynamic is unbalanced and unsustainable. The withdrawal that follows isn't calculated or manipulative, it's protective. It's his psyche's natural defense mechanism against continued erosion of his self-worth. He pulls back not to create distance as a strategy, but because continuing to engage at the previous level would require him to betray himself, to accept treatment that contradicts his core values. And self-betrayal is something the Sigma male will never choose, regardless of how much he cares about someone. Inconsistency, the pattern that reveals true priority. Another thing that makes him quietly walk away is inconsistency. Not the kind that comes from being busy or having a difficult day, but the kind that reveals a change in priority. One day she's warm, affectionate, and present. The next day she's cold, distant, and unavailable. Her energy shifts without explanation. Her effort becomes unpredictable. And while most men chase during these moments trying to win back attention, the Sigma male does the opposite. He steps back. Because he understands a powerful truth. Consistency reflects intention. When someone truly values you, their effort doesn't disappear randomly. Their presence doesn't feel conditional. And when he begins to notice that she only shows up when it's convenient for her, he stops investing at the same level. Not out of anger, but out of awareness. He mirrors energy, not to manipulate, but to remain aligned with reality. He doesn't question her aggressively. He doesn't demand answers. He observes patterns, and patterns never lie. He notices how quickly she responds to others compared to him. He notices how her enthusiasm fades. He notices when conversations feel forced instead of natural. And instead of confronting her emotionally, he becomes emotionally independent. This is what makes him different. He doesn't fear distance. He doesn't fear being alone, because he was already alone before she entered his life. His peace was self-created. His confidence was self-built. And he will never sacrifice his inner stability for temporary emotional comfort. And the moment he realizes that her effort is no longer genuine, he begins to detach. He stops expecting. He stops waiting. He stops hoping for things to return to how they were. Because he understands that genuine interest never needs to be forced. It flows naturally. And when it stops flowing, forcing it only destroys dignity. So instead of chasing, he chooses silence. Instead of clinging, he chooses distance. And instead of losing himself trying to keep someone, he quietly lets go. The Sigma male has a unique relationship with solitude. Unlike those who fear being alone and will tolerate poor treatment to avoid it, he views solitude as neutral, sometimes even preferable to low-quality connection. This isn't misanthropy or emotional unavailability, it's self-awareness. He knows that his mental and emotional well-being doesn't depend on external validation or constant companionship. He cultivated these qualities long before she arrived, and they remain intact regardless of her presence or absence. This independence gives him clarity that others lack. When someone's behavior becomes inconsistent, most people experience anxiety and immediately try to fix it, often by increasing their own effort or pursuing more intensely. The Sigma male does the opposite. He recognizes inconsistency as a communication, a message that he's no longer a priority. Rather than fight this reality or try to convince someone to choose him consistently, he accepts the information and adjusts accordingly. His mirroring of energy isn't a game or a tactic designed to create jealousy or regain interest. It's an authentic response to changed circumstances. If someone brings less energy, he matches it. If someone creates distance, he respects it. This isn't passive-aggressive behavior, it's emotional integrity. He refuses to be more invested in someone than they are in him, because such imbalance inevitably leads to resentment, loss of self-respect, and emotional exhaustion. What often surprises people is that once the Sigma male begins this emotional withdrawal, it's extraordinarily difficult to reverse. He's not playing hard to get or waiting for her to prove herself. He's genuinely moving on internally. His emotions don't operate on a switch that can be flipped back on with a few affectionate gestures or apologies. Once his mind has categorized the relationship as unviable, his heart follows. And reconnecting requires not just words or temporary changed behavior, but sustained demonstration of genuine transformation over time. Emotional manipulation, the death of authentic connection. One of the biggest reasons a Sigma male walks away is emotional manipulation. Not always obvious, not always intentional, but he feels it. The guilt trips, the subtle attempts to control his emotions, the way she withdraws affection to influence his behavior, the way she creates emotional pressure instead of emotional safety. At first, he tries to understand. He gives space. He remains patient. Because he knows people have fears, insecurities, and past wounds. But over time, he begins to recognize the difference between vulnerability and manipulation. Vulnerability invites connection. Manipulation creates control. And the Sigma male cannot be controlled. He values emotional freedom more than emotional attachment, because to him, love is not ownership. Love is not pressure. Love is not fear. Love is peace. And the moment he starts feeling emotionally drained instead of emotionally strengthened, he begins to withdraw. He stops reacting to emotional games. He stops feeding the cycles. He stops trying to fix emotions that were never his responsibility to fix. Because he understands that emotional manipulation thrives on reaction. And when he stops reacting, the manipulation loses power. This is when she may notice the biggest change in him. He becomes calm in situations where he once showed concern. He becomes quiet where he once expressed emotion. He stops explaining himself repeatedly. Not because he stopped caring, but because he stopped fighting for emotional stability in a place that no longer provides it. The Sigma male protects his mental clarity like his life depends on it. Because in many ways, it does. His peace is the foundation of everything he builds. His focus, his ambition, his strength. And he will never allow emotional chaos to destroy the internal world he worked so hard to create. So instead of arguing, he observes. Instead of reacting, he detaches. And instead of trying to change her, he changes his proximity. He creates distance. Quietly. Gradually. Permanently. Emotional manipulation is particularly toxic to the Sigma male because it directly contradicts his core values of authenticity and freedom. He believes relationships should be spaces of mutual support where both people feel safe to express themselves honestly. When interactions become transactional, when affection is weaponized, when guilt is used as leverage, when emotional responses are manufactured to produce specific outcomes, the relationship transforms from a partnership into a power struggle. The Sigma male's highly developed emotional intelligence allows him to detect these patterns even when they're subtle. He notices when conversations are designed to make him feel guilty rather than understood. He recognizes when tears or anger are being deployed strategically rather than expressed genuinely. He senses when boundaries are being tested not out of curiosity, but out of a desire to see how much control can be exerted. Initially, he gives the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps she's going through something difficult. Perhaps past relationships taught her these defensive strategies. Perhaps she doesn't even realize she's being manipulative. He extends compassion and tries to create an environment where healthier communication can emerge. But if the patterns persist, if every attempt at honest dialogue is met with deflection, blame shifting, or emotional theatrics, he begins the disengagement process. What's crucial to understand is that this isn't about him being cold or unforgiving. It's about recognizing that he cannot fix someone else's emotional patterns, especially when those patterns are directed at controlling him. He's learned that trying to love someone into health or security doesn't work. Each person must do their own internal work, and staying in a manipulative dynamic doesn't help either party. It enables the manipulator to avoid accountability while gradually eroding his own mental health. When the Sigma male goes quiet in response to emotional manipulation, it's often misinterpreted as indifference or stonewalling. But it's actually the opposite of engagement with toxicity. He's refusing to participate in destructive patterns. He's declining to have his emotions weaponized against him. He's establishing a boundary that says, I will not allow this interaction to destabilize my inner peace. And if establishing that boundary requires complete withdrawal from the relationship, He'll make that choice without hesitation. Taking presence for granted, the slow fade of value. Another sign that makes him walk away is when he feels his presence is being taken for granted. This doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly. In small ways. She stops appreciating his effort. She stops acknowledging his presence. She assumes he'll always stay, no matter how little she gives in return. And this assumption is where everything breaks, because the Sigma male never stays out of dependency. He stays out of choice. Every moment he gives is intentional. Every piece of his attention is earned, not given blindly. He doesn't need constant connection. He doesn't need validation to survive. He chooses connection because he sees value in it. But the moment that value disappears, his reason to stay disappears with it. He begins to notice the imbalance. He notices that he's the one initiating conversations. He notices that he's the one maintaining emotional depth. He notices that his effort is no longer being reciprocated. And instead of begging for equal effort, he reduces his own. Not to punish her, but to restore balance within himself. Because he understands a truth most people ignore. The more you give where you are not valued, the more you lose yourself. And losing himself is something he will never allow. He doesn't announce his departure. He doesn't create drama. He simply becomes less available, less emotionally invested, less present. His energy shifts inward. His focus returns to his purpose, his growth, his life. And eventually, his absence becomes louder than his presence ever was. She may notice it too late. She may try to bring him back. She may suddenly offer the effort she once withheld. But by then, something fundamental has changed. Because once a Sigma male emotionally disconnects, reconnecting requires more than words. It requires consistency. It requires genuine change. And most importantly, it requires rebuilding the respect that was lost. Because without respect, there is nothing to rebuild. The Sigma male operates on the principle of energetic reciprocity. Not in a transactional sense where he's keeping score of every favor or gesture, but in the broader sense of mutual investment in the relationship's well-being. He's aware that healthy relationships involve both people contributing to the connection, initiating contact, planning time together, showing interest in each other's lives, expressing appreciation, and maintaining emotional presence. When he notices that he's consistently the one making effort while her engagement becomes passive and assumed, it triggers something deep within him. It's not anger or resentment initially. It's disappointment. He's disappointed because he thought the connection was mutual, that both people valued it equally. The realization that he's more invested than she is doesn't wound his ego. It informs his decision-making. What others often mistake for pride or stubbornness is actually self-preservation. The Sigma male has learned, often through painful experience, that continuing to pour energy into a one-sided dynamic is emotionally corrosive. It breeds resentment on both sides. He begins to resent her for not matching his effort, and she may begin to resent him for giving more than she asked for, creating an unspoken obligation she never wanted. So, rather than allow this toxic cycle to develop, he addresses the imbalance in the only way that preserves both people's dignity. He stops overfunctioning. He reduces his effort to match hers. This isn't manipulation or a test to see if she'll notice and step up. It's genuine recalibration. He's aligning his actions with the reality of the relationship rather than with his hopes for what it could be. The tragedy is that by the time she notices his withdrawal and attempts to re-engage, the emotional damage is often irreversible. The Sigma male has a long fuse, but once it burns out completely, there's no relighting it. He gave her countless opportunities to participate actively in the relationship. He demonstrated through his own behavior what mutual investment looks like. And when those implicit invitations were repeatedly ignored or taken for granted, he drew his conclusion. This person doesn't value my presence enough to maintain it. Her sudden renewed interest, while perhaps genuine, often strikes him as reactive rather than authentic. She's responding to his absence, not valuing his presence. And he's wise enough to recognize the difference. He doesn't want to be wanted only when he's walking away. He wants to be valued when he's present, appreciated when he's contributing, and respected when he's available. Anything less than that isn't worth his time, energy, or emotional investment. The loss of inner peace, the final breaking point. Perhaps the deepest reason he walks away is when he loses his inner peace around her. This is the final stage, the point of no return. Because peace is not just something he values, it is something he protects at all costs. When he starts feeling anxious instead of calm, when conversations feel heavy instead of effortless, when his mind feels clouded instead of clear, he knows something is wrong. The Sigma male pays attention to his internal state. He listens to what his silence tells him. He notices when his energy feels drained after interactions. He notices when he feels emotionally exhausted instead of emotionally fulfilled. And he understands that no connection is worth sacrificing his mental stability. He doesn't blame her. He doesn't hate her. He simply accepts reality. He accepts that not every connection is meant to last forever. Some people enter your life to teach you lessons. Some enter to test your boundaries, and some enter to show you what you will never tolerate again. And when he reaches this level of clarity, his decision becomes irreversible. He stops fighting internally. He stops questioning himself. He stops holding on to memories that no longer reflect reality. He releases the emotional attachment, not with anger, but with acceptance. And this is what makes his departure so powerful. Because he doesn't leave in chaos, he leaves in peace. He doesn't leave to prove a point. He leaves to protect himself. He doesn't leave because he lost his value. He leaves because he remembered it. And once he walks away, he doesn't look back, not because he never cared, but because he cares about himself more. Inner peace is the Sigma male's most precious resource. It's the state from which all his strength, clarity, and effectiveness flow. When his peace is intact, he can navigate challenges, pursue his goals, and show up fully in his relationships. But when something or someone consistently disrupts that peace, everything else begins to deteriorate. His focus fragments, his energy depletes, his natural resilience weakens. The Sigma male is highly attuned to his internal state because he's spent years cultivating self-awareness. He knows what peace feels like in his body, the absence of tension, the clarity of thought, the sense of being grounded and centered. And he knows what disruption feels like, the knot in his stomach before interactions, the mental rehearsals of conversations, the emotional exhaustion that follows what should be simple exchanges. When a relationship consistently generates anxiety rather than comfort, when he finds himself walking on eggshells or constantly managing her emotions at the expense of his own equilibrium, he recognizes this as fundamentally unsustainable. Love shouldn't require sacrificing your mental health. Partnership shouldn't feel like perpetual crisis management. Connection shouldn't leave you feeling more alone than when you were actually alone. What's remarkable about the Sigma male's final departure is its quality of peace. He doesn't leave in a storm of recriminations or dramatic pronouncements. He doesn't seek to hurt her or make her understand what she's lost. He simply recognizes that the relationship has become incompatible with his well-being, and he chooses himself. This isn't selfishness, it's self-respect. It's the understanding that he cannot be of value to anyone, including her, if he's operating from a depleted, anxious, destabilized state. The acceptance that accompanies his departure is profound. He doesn't view the relationship's end as a failure, but as an inevitable conclusion based on incompatibility. He doesn't villainize her or cast himself as a victim. He simply acknowledges that what they created together is no longer serving either of them, and the kindest thing he can do is release both of them from a dynamic that's causing more harm than good. This level of emotional maturity is rare. Most people leave relationships in anger, seeking validation for their decision through blame and narrative control. The Sigma male needs none of that. His validation comes from within. His decision doesn't require external agreement or understanding. He knows his truth, trusts his assessment, and acts accordingly. The wisdom in walking away. If you've ever wondered why a Sigma male can disappear without warning, This is why. He doesn't leave impulsively. He leaves after observing, after understanding, after accepting. His silence is not weakness, it is wisdom. His distance is not fear, it is self-respect. And his departure is not loss, it is transformation. Because in the end, the Sigma male knows one thing with absolute certainty. Where there is no respect, no consistency, and no peace, there is no reason to stay. The Sigma male's departure, when it finally comes, is the culmination of a long, internal process. From the outside, it may appear sudden. One day he's there, the next, he's gone. But internally, he's been evaluating, processing, and coming to terms with reality for weeks or even months. Every conversation, every interaction, every moment of disconnection has been registered and considered. His decision isn't reactive. It's the result of careful, often painful analysis. What looks like coldness or indifference is actually profound clarity. He's moved through the emotional stages of hoping things would improve, of questioning whether he was being too sensitive or demanding, of wondering if he should try harder or communicate better. He's examined his own contributions to the relationship's problems. He's given her the benefit of the doubt repeatedly, and he's finally arrived at an unshakable conclusion. This relationship, as it currently exists, is detrimental to his well-being. The strength required to walk away from someone you care about, someone you've invested time and emotion in, someone whose presence has become familiar, even if it's no longer nourishing. This strength is considerable. It would be easier in many ways to stay, to tolerate, to make excuses, to hope without evidence that change is coming. But the Sigma male has a different relationship with discomfort. He's willing to face the short-term pain of departure to avoid the long-term erosion of staying in a fundamentally misaligned connection. His post-departure phase is typically characterized by rapid recovery and refocusing. Because he processed the relationship's end internally before it ended externally, there's no prolonged mourning period, no dramatic displays of heartbreak, no obsessive replay of what went wrong. He's already done that work privately. Now he simply moves forward, redirecting his energy toward his goals, his growth, and his life purpose. And if this message resonated with you, if you understand the power of protecting your peace and choosing your worth over temporary attachment, then remember this. The strongest person in the room is not the one who stays and tolerates everything. It's the one who has the strength to walk away when they realize they deserve better. True strength isn't endurance for its own sake. Suffering through bad situations doesn't build character, it erodes it. True strength is knowing your worth and having the courage to enforce boundaries that protect it. It's recognizing when a situation is harming you and having the self-respect to remove yourself from it. It's choosing temporary discomfort over permanent diminishment. The Sigma male embodies this principle completely. He doesn't stay to prove his loyalty or commitment. He doesn't stay hoping his perseverance will inspire change. He doesn't stay out of fear of being alone or starting over. He stays only as long as the relationship aligns with his values and contributes positively to his life. And when that alignment breaks, he has the clarity and strength to walk away. This isn't about being unforgiving or unwilling to work through difficulties. The Sigma male is capable of tremendous patience and effort when he believes the relationship has solid foundations. But he also recognizes the difference between normal relationship challenges that can be resolved through communication and effort versus fundamental incompatibilities or destructive patterns that won't change no matter how much energy he invests. Stay strong, stay aware, and never be afraid to choose yourself. Because at the end of the day, the relationship you have with yourself is the most important one you'll ever have. And no external connection, no matter how appealing or comfortable it might seem, is worth sacrificing your self-respect, your peace, or your sense of worth. The Sigma male understands this at his core. And that's why, when he walks away, he does so with his head held high, his peace intact, and his future uncompromised. He doesn't look back because there's nothing behind him worth more than what lies ahead. And that unwavering commitment to his own well-being, that absolute clarity about his value, is what makes his departure not an ending, but a powerful new beginning.